I'm Ken. I build cigar box guitars. This one here is my latest one. I've built about 20. But this one's going out to New York City as soon as this video is over. Why do I like this kind of twangy junk style music? Well, it might go back to my parents owning a bar in Wisconsin when I was 2 and 3 years old. It might be that I heard Speedy West on a steel guitar. It might be that I used to work the oil fields in the panhandle of Texas, and the only stations that would come in with a twangy old country. Anyway, this music just resonates in my bones, and I really like it. Somebody suggested that because I'm kind of picky and unique about how I build these things down to the kind of box I use and pickups and different components, that I make a video showing how to build one step by step, and I've done that. So let's watch that. It's kind of long, but you can pick through it and see what you like and what you don't. And then at the end we'll hear how this thing sounds before I wrap it up and ship it out to New York City. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to my collection of Camacho boxes. I like Camacho boxes, and we're going to pick this one out. I've already talked to the person I'm making this guitar for, and we've determined that this is the box and the color of box that they like. I've taken the top of the box off here so we can see these are thick boxes. They're not like a paper thin box like one of these old ones like this, or even one of these more modern boxes. A lot of people like this because they give you a sound that's different, acoustic sound. But I like these Camacho boxes because they're thick, they'll hold up, and if you're actually making for one for somebody that plays commercially or is in a band, I guess is how you would put that, these things are they hold up well. They're kind of bulletproof. Now I've taken the lid off the box by unloosening these screws up here, and now I'm gonna cut this off or get this part of the sticker off. Of course, we're gonna leave little remnants of it here and there so you can see that it was a cigar box. But the first thing I've got to do is get rid of this scorpion. That's kind of creepy, you know, whatever. Anyway, I'm gonna need this to be sanded off so I can work it and lay some things out. So let's do that. So this little palm vibratory sander is my weapon of choice here to get this lacquer coating off the top of the box. Okay, that looks pretty good there. It's roughed up. I can do my layout here. Now also I'm going to want to turn this over because on the bottom side of the lid there's going to be this area right in here where I'm going to be gluing the neck to it and doing some stuff. And you want to remember that any lacquer or painted surface is not a good gluing surface. So I'm going to run a skunk stripe down here with the sander, and let's do that now. Okay, there's that skunk stripe on the back. It doesn't have to be pretty. Nobody's going to see the inside of the box. And this here is just as well. So the top of the box is sanded off and prepped for the next step. Okay, so I've got my metric ruler on top of the box. It's showing it's 174 millimeters, which is 87. How you like my calculator? These new phones are awesome for some things. And so I'm going to mark at 87 millimeters on both ends of the box. So now I've marked at 87 and 87 here. Again, it depends on the width of your box top, and now I'm going to run a line down here, and that's going to identify the center of the box for me, and that's going to be really important to stay square on a number of things that's going to go on the top of this box. The last big thing I'm going to do to prep the box is there's this fuzzy stuff on the bottom of the box. That's going to come off. It's going to be covered. Now I've learned that some of this stuff comes off real quickly, and other times it'll just be something that takes you a long time to do. But once this is done, I want to keep the sides of the box nice because that's going to matter. You're going to be able to see that through the life of the guitar. So we're going to protect this and be careful, but this has got to come off. So Again, this is just taking a scraper, getting under the corner and peeling it back. I'll get that off and we'll have another look. Alright, we took the sander, we roughed up the bottom of the box. There it is, that's all done. Okay, so I've got the top of the box sanded off, and I've got things marked out and laid out. There's going to be a number of things that go on here. There's going to be sound holes up here, one on each side. There's going to be a single coil pickup that'll go right here. You got to kind of pay attention to where the logo or the graphic is on your box lid and how you want things to be laid out. I'm going to use a floating bridge like you see on an old Silvertone or a K. That's going to drop right into here, and then most importantly, the neck on this guitar is going to be set into the top of the box here, so that's going to actually end up there. And one of the things that's really important here is you'll see it says bridge right here, and that bridge has to line up with this part of the box here, because if you don't line all this up, it won't play right. So you can see I've drilled a number of holes here that I can get a jigsaw blade into and then cut these out on the lines cleanly. You'll notice that I use tape. I tape off everything so I don't bug out the back end too much. Of course, this is going to be hid underneath inside the box, but nonetheless I don't like to chip everything and all that. So time to get cutting. If you're going to make very many of these cigar box guitars, it might pay to get you a set of these Forstner bits. If you go to Harbor Freight or somewhere like that, you can get a set that's pretty reasonable, but they'll come in handy for drilling holes for jacks and your volume controls and your sound holes and all that. So I would recommend you do that if you're going to build very many of these. So I've pre-drilled a little hole right there so I can put my Forstner bit right there. So I'm going to take a drill attachment that I have and just work these nice and round until this drain fits in. Alright, there we go. You can see these drains fit right in. They're pretty snug. You don't want to have to beat them in. If you beat them in, then if you crack this in here, that's not a problem, but they need to be snug enough for this lip right here rides this. They're ultimately going to hold down some bolts that keep the box together, but anyway, that's what you're looking for right there. Next part's pretty easy. I take a jigsaw like this and I go and cut these areas that I have marked out. I cut those out, and I use these pre-drilled holes as a means of getting into corners and making this easy. You don't want to be taking your jigsaw and bending it, trying to go around curves, because again, if you crack this right here or here or here or down in here, you're going to end up starting over, and you don't want that. We already got probably an hour into this lid already. Okay, cut one turned out nice because this is going to sit around the neck like this. This neck is actually going to stick up above this box, which means I'm going to have to route this out here, and then there's going to be some additional routing that takes place for the pickup, which is deeper than this, and as well as the bridge, it sticks up. So you're gonna want to pay attention to your measurements here, because at the end of the day, your strings really can't be any more than a quarter width between the 12th fret, or it won't keep its intonation. And now the pickup, this is the pickup cover. It goes on this side of the box. This here goes underneath the box or flipped over, but there's holes here, and so I have to drill holes in the box right here so I can adjust the pickup up and down. So I'm going to do that now. Now, whenever I'm going to drill holes like that, I'm always going to use a small bit to drill a pilot hole before I drill the bigger bit that will ultimately have to hold the screw and the spacer. Okay, so that's what it looks like now. You see that hole there, that hole lines up with this. Those are adjustment holes for these screws that will adjust how high the pickup is or how close it is to the strings, and then I'll end up drilling holes here for the mounting hardware. But that's how the single coil is mounted, just like that. Yeah, so this is how it's starting to come together so far. We've still got some bridge work to do, and then of course the volume controls, and there will be some other stuff on here we'll get to, but yeah, this is how it's coming along. Okay, so we're getting the box lid ready for some graphics. So all the holes got to be drilled. Now you'll notice I drilled 2 holes right here. These are going to be for these potentiometers that are volume controls. There's 2 of them. One for a piezo, which is a buzzer. It picks up vibrations. It gives you that 1930s sing in a can, twangy, rattle the top of the box, beat on the box sound. And then there's the coil, of course, which is the more modern electrical guitar sound. Now, the bridge is going to sit right here, so you got to make sure that these are placed so there's an edge of the box that we don't want to interfere with. This has got to go underneath here. And so again, there's going to be 2 volume controls for 2 different pickups on this guitar. One last thing I almost forgot is I'm going to put box corners on the box. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a small bit and I'm going to pre-drill each one of these little holes. So with all the holes cut, now we're ready to put the graphic on top of the box and then do all the cutouts here and hide all this mess. Alright, we got the graphic on the top of the box. Everything's cut out for all the components, and we got some more work to do, but that's kind of gives you an idea what it's going to look like. We're going to matchbook the neck. One of the first things we're going to want to do is we're going to find out where the center of the box is, and also the lid, because a lot of things are going to be marked off of that. Where the neck goes, how deep this cut is made here to seat the neck, where things line up on the top of the box. So we're going to mark that off next. A little commentary here. You know, it was funny, when I was in elementary school a long time ago, they told me, oh, we're going to have to learn the metric system because it's going to be the way of the future. Now, I've spent about, well, 50 some years waiting for that to happen, and the only time I really figured out that the metric system was going to help me out was when I started making cigar box guitars, believe that or not. Okay, now we're going to go to work on the box. A couple of things I want to do is pre-drill the holes for the metal corners. I want to do that, and I'm going to do all 4 corners there. Now, the next thing I want to do is, and I catch a lot of flack about this from people who are purists or whatever, but I take caulking and I put a bead of caulk everywhere inside the box like this, because it seals up the box, and in the event that somebody were to drop the guitar or something like that, it kind of solidifies it. Now I've got this tool here, so I just run it down the corner and do that, and run this all the way down like that, and then I'm going to do all the sides of the box and let that harden up before I do anything else. Okay, there we go. I've got the inside of the box all caulked up here. Again, I'm using a kitchen and bath adhesive caulk. It dries clear. I use this thing to make things smooth. It's clear, dries clear. You never see it. It solidifies the box. In the event that somebody drops it, it hits a corner, it holds things together. Because if you're making these things for people to play, and they drop it once and it fails them on stage, they lose confidence in your instrument, and then it becomes a wall hanger. So if you're into making wall hangers, good. If not, I would suggest you caulk the box. Besides that, a coil and a piezo, they really don't have much to do with. They're not hampered much by caulking. Alright, on the bottom half of the box, you're going to make a cut like this to seat the neck on both sides of the box. That's made with the fine tooth saw. The horizontal cut is made with this puppy. And then you just sand it and do whatever you need to do to make it fit. You want to remember this has to be wide enough for the neck and the lid to open this way, when the box is done. If you don't build them this way, then you're building a guitar that you have to take the strings off of, unbolt half the world to do anything to the electronics. So this is the reason I do it like this. Okay, now in the bottom of the box, I've drilled a hole for this bolt. The bolt will fit down in there snugly. And what happens is it comes up through the box and then comes through there. And we put this wing nut right there through there. And that's really what holds the box closed. So that's the secret. Okay, I've drilled 2 holes in the back of the box at the tailpiece end for 2 jacks, like so. And remember, this is going to have 2 pickups. One's going to go to a piezo, one's going to go to a single coil. And let's not forget our pin for our strap, our guitar strap. We'll have one of those at the front and one at the rear of the box. And then there's that little last hole right there in the front of the guitar, and that's for a grease zert. Why grease zert? Yeah, just in case your plane gets a little rusty. Now I want to talk a little bit about necks. I don't want to get into it too deep because it's a whole topic in itself and how to do it. But you can buy a pre-made neck. You could buy a neck or a guitar at a thrift store and take the neck off of it and fix it to your cigar box. Or you could just get a piece of wood here and figure out where the frets are going to go. You can actually buy fret boards that are pre-made that you either can cut the fret slots in them yourself, but in either one of these situations, you buy fret wire here, and you basically cut the frets, you hammer them in to these little slots here, and then you have to level them and all kinds of things. So there's a lot of work to this, and you know, the edges, when you're playing the guitar, you don't want to be snagging or having whoever's playing a snag themselves on. But there's a lot of work here, so this is a whole video in itself. Anyway, those are a couple of options. Now, what I've done here is I've basically routed out where the box top will go. Here, there's going to have to be room for the single coil. The bridge is its own thing. Okay, so I'm putting on this loud red paint. That's part of what we all decided upon. Now when you're painting, put the paint on in thin layers and numerous layers. And also it's very important that you have like mustard weed, dried mustard weed all over the place around you, because it controls the humidity or something else. I would tell my wife about why I'm building guitars instead of clearing off mustard weeds off the property. Don't tell her. I hope she doesn't see this. Don't share it with her, okay? Promise? Okay, now we're going to start working on putting in the tuners. We're going to put a tad bit of glue in here. You don't want your tuners working loose after a couple of years, so you put a little bit of glue on there. Put this keeper on. This goes on the top, like so. And then we'll take a rubber mallet and we'll just drive that in, and we'll do the rest of them the same way. There we go. All the retainers are in there on the top, and we'll flip it over and put the tuners in from the other side. Now we're going to put the tuners in. Remember, we pre-drilled the holes, and then it's just little screwdriver work, and put the tuners in. This part's really easy. It's just a matter of putting screws in to the tuners and tightening them down, and easy stuff now. And there's the top of the headstock. We've got the graphic on, and you can see the tuners are in with the trim. Okay, we're going to start matchbooking the neck now. This is what it looks like before. Alright, the matchbooks are on the neck. Alright, now I'm going to spend a little time showing you the tailpiece where the strings and everything come together. So I like this little ruler. It serves as a depth gauge, handy to have in around, several of them. Thank you Acton Ace Hardware for getting these in. I misplaced mine and I was lost without it. So I'm simply going to use the guitar I built in the past. You will see how long the tailpiece is from the cut of the box, and then you come in here. You simply mark that off with your trusty T-square. That's something you'll need. Anyway, then what happens is you really have to pay attention that your strings are grounded, especially if you're using a wood bridge like this one. And so to accomplish that, what I do is I use these tension pins. You'll notice there's a slot back here. When you're putting your tension pins in these holes that you drill, you want to make sure that the slots are facing the back of the guitar, because if they're around this way, then the strings drop in that slot and get cut or whatever. But anyway, when you're driving those in, they need to be snug to the wood, so you pick your drill bit. Anyway, once the tension pins are in, I use, this is the trick to grounding. It's copper, a stick-on foil. It will ground anything. There's a layer of that underneath here going back into the electronics. And then what I do is I cover that with an old canning lid. You know what these are. If you don't, you miss part of life. Anyway, you just basically take your shears, cut those, match it to this side. And then once that's lined up, you drill 4 little holes. You put your screws in, very small screws. These are, I use a ton of these in these, building these things. And then anyway, once this is covered up, you find where the mark is. You can either do that from underneath when you're doing this side, drive it in, drill it, and then use a number punch or an awl or something to get those holes in, and you flip it over and do it on the other side. But it's really important that this part has metal that has a way through this to be grounded to the inside electronics. Okay, I'm just going to take this awl and mark off my holes for these tension pins to get a good straight start, and then I'm just going to... Now what I want to show you here is these strings actually go through these pins and make the metal to metal contact, but then at the end, this gadget, this little ring at the end of the string, is what keeps it in the guitar, or keeps it from slipping. So what you don't want is you don't want that piece down here snagging and everything. So I know that the length of the pin or the tension pin, and so I'm going to make a little notch here. First I'm going to cut this with a fine-tooth saw like this right here, and then I'm going to take a router and route this out. So this will be protected, this end piece of the string will be protected and won't snag on anything. Alright, there we go. That's what the inset looks like. The pins are that long. They go in here, they'll be here, and the string keepers will hold right here out of the way of everything. Okay, I want to give you a close-up of this. Remember, these tension pins with the slot to the back of the guitar are going to slip into here like so. But before I do that, I'm going to want to put this copper sheeting here on here like this, because then when these strings drop in here and make contact with the copper, I can ground my strings through this way. So I'm going to find out where those holes are, push the awl through like so, and so I'll have 4 holes here. There we go. There we go. There we go. And I'll put a wrist pin. Again, one more time, these to the back. If you don't put those to the back, you're going to have a problem. So then I'm going to tap those in like so. And next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this lid and I'm going to cut it with these shears. And I'm going to go to the edge there like this. And I'm going to cut it nice and straight, and then I'm going to lay this on here like so, figure out where I'm at, mark that, and then cut that. And of course I'm going to take this opportunity to knock down any rough edges that are on there, so somebody doesn't hang it up or get it cut or cut themselves up. So I'll do that. And then also what I want to do is I want to trim off the very corners so they're not a sharp corner that's going to hang on something. So I'm going to get that there and just trim off the very corners so you can see that I've trimmed those corners off like so. Then I'm going to lay this on here and I'm going to drill 4 holes to keep this in place, and then we'll find out where these line up underneath by drilling from the bottom up through here, and then we'll take our awl and punch that in nice and smooth. Okay, you can see here I've drilled from the bottom up through here like so, and have these 4 little holes, a very small bit, same bit that I used to drill the holes, the pilot holes for these little screws. Now I'm going to take my awl and put it there and just drive it down like so. Now, by doing it this way, when I run the string up through here, again the keeper will be there, and by doing it this way, what I've done is I've taken all the rough edges off this, and the putting the awl in this way causes the metal from this canning lid to actually go down and be in contact with the tension pin. So that's going to give me a good ground. And again, I've got copper tape going all the way inside the box and on the side here, so I can run my grounds off my jacks and my potentiometers, which are volume controls, to here, and I'll get a good ground. Alright, so there is the top of the tailpiece ready for strings to be run up through it. Got some bridge work to do, and of course we've got to match book the neck and get the graphic on top of the box, but we're coming right along. Now, a couple things before we do some soldering. On these volume potentiometers, there's these 3 connection points. One of them's for ground, one of them goes to your pickup or piezo, and the other one goes to your jack. So before I start, I'm going to want to take some sandpaper, just rough this up a little bit, get rid of the oil and the shiny surface, and you'll find that solder will stick to it well. So it's just simple sandpaper and do that. A little trick I've learned is when you take your wire strippers, strip off the end, and you're going to hook this to the potentiometer. This is your ground wire. You see I put that little bend in there? I'm going to put this through like this, and then I can just bend it like that and crimp it and hold it in place, and that way when I solder, it's ready to go and it's not moving around like that, see? Something else I do is I take a little piece of heat shrink like this and put it on the wire, and then when I solder this like this at the end, I'll slip that over it, put a match to it for a minute, and that way you'll never have these touching each other because this little bit of shrink is right there. I've had good luck with that. Now I've taken a very small solder here, small gauge solder, and touched it to a soldering iron, and then touched that to there, and then again we're just going to put this shrink over the top of that like that, and I'll put a match to it, and you see it just shrinks right up there, and there's no way that this will ever touch these other ones, and I'll do the same to those once I'm done. Okay, this green wire here is a ground wire. It goes from that end connection point there. I'm going to take a little bit of solder and I'm going to tin this. They call this tinning. You're going to have some stuff grounding to here, and then that's going to sit there like that. So I'm going to take some of this thin gauge here and put a ball of solder on here, and then I'm just going to push this down, and I'm going to let that solder run right there. Hold it, let it cool, and then there you go. And then this third one is just a little jumper that's going to go right to the piezo, so it doesn't have to be very long. Again, we just put a spot on there and fill that hole, we'll slide this down here and heat it, and that'll be it. We got a couple ground wires to put on the top of the sound control potentiometer, and we're good to go. Okay, another little trick here. I'm using a hot glue gun to put this piezo on, so I just put the piezo down, tack it in place along the edges. Once that's stable, then I take and cover the whole thing, including the connections here. We don't want these coming loose when you're opening and closing the box. This stabilizes this, and this will stay here. And plus, if you don't like the way it sounds, you need to move it around. So you want to put it right under the bridge, or you want to put it on the other side, or wherever it's going to give you the best sound. You can just cut the glue away and start over. So again, this is a piezo. It will go to this volume control here, and then of course the single coil here goes to this volume control. And that's the wiring. It isn't pretty, but we'll see how it works in a couple minutes. The last thing I want to talk to you about is the bridge and the nut up here, and how the string height really matters on whether your instrument is useful or not. The first advice I have for you is, if you're going to build one of these, this part right here, the fingerboard, it's better than it's high on the box than low on the box. You can fix high, but if these are at the same level, you're always going to end up with strings that are too high, and very few players really want to play slide all the time. They want to use their fingers on the fret and that. So you really got to watch that. A little bit about this bridge here. You'll remember I cut this hole in the box. There's another piece of wood under here that's fairly thin, and then this sits on that piece of wood, which sits on the neck section that runs all the way through the box. Now this is a hard wood, and I had to do a lot of work to this, grinding this down, sanding, cutting these holes in here. But I've got this at a spot where I've got a little bit of room where I could take this down if I need to, or I could bring it up literally that much there. So this is an ideal situation. Now why do I use these? You start off using bolts. Well, threaded bolts as a bridge. Things move around. The guitar's always coming out of tune. Somebody that I respect very much told me, you got to get away from the bolts, especially on the bridge. Now you'll notice that the nut, I use a bolt. I like the way this looks. Plus it gives me a way to allow these to space differently. Now what I'll do is, before I ship this off, I'm going to take a fine file, and where the spacing is right for these strings, I'm going to cut just a real light notch in there so these strings don't move around on these threads. But I like this look, and it works good for me. Now, if you've ever bought one of those old K or Airline or Harmony arch tops from the 50s and early 60s, you know that the neck breaks loose right here, and then at the 12th fret the strings get too high because the neck is bowing in this way. And so what you really want to shoot for is at the 12th fret here. The first thing that needs to happen is, if you play a G on open up here, so you're not putting your fingers on anything, and you're sounding a G, then on the 12th fret you also want to sound a G. So if you're a half note off or a note off, that's no good. And again, the precision players won't like that. So a good rule of thumb, you take a quarter, and if you can slide more than a quarter between the string and the fret at the 12th fret, chances are you got a problem. So again, I've got plenty of room here to be able to adjust this by turning these thumb screws. If you follow those directions, you should end up with something that kind of looks like this, and maybe even sounds like this. Now, before I play a little bit, you have to remember, I don't play guitar, I don't understand music. I started making these things for my daughter Tammy, and it kind of went on from there. Okay, this is 4 strings, heaviest one on top, lightest one on the bottom. It is tuned G, C, G, C, which is a slight variation of G, D, G, D, which is one of the tunings that some cigar box guitar players use because they say they can play just about anything with that tuning. But one more time, G, starting off at the low string, G, C, G, C. Now this guitar has 2 pickups on it, one for a piezo, one for the single coil here, and volume controls for each. You could play this thing as an acoustic by putting a microphone here, but it's not too loud. Okay, now I'm going to start kicking on volume switches for each of the pickups and show you what that will do. But in order to do this correctly, we got to start doing things with the percussion section, the Wisconsin beatbox. The first thing we're going to do is turn up the piezo a little bit. The piezo picks up this, picks up this. It's the same kind of thing I got in the percussion section. Now the single coil doesn't pick that kind of stuff up, it just picks up the strings. A little bit cleaner than the piezo. So by varying the volume controls, you can figure out what you want it to sound more with the single coil, more trashy, whatever you want. So you can, this instrument's pretty versatile. Send this out to New York and I'll get a video of the player that gets it and we'll see how he does with it.